Enterprise sales is critical. The Forbes Global 2000, the largest companies globally, generate over $52 trillion in sales annually. To put that in perspective, global GDP is projected to be $114 trillion in 2025, which means that these organizations make up approximately 46% of the world's total activity. However, enterprise sales has a productivity crisis. Revenue growth is 50% slower and customer acquisition costs have risen 50% in the last 3 years. Most companies now need 5x pipeline coverage just to hit quota. Sellers are feeling the weight of that every single day. CROs and CFOs are feeling it on the top and the bottom line. And for Sales Ops and RevOps leaders, the responsibility for fixing that often lands squarely in your world. Leaders are rightly turning to AI for answers. But what most of the market has done today is what we would classify as augmented selling tools. Sales and marketing teams spinning up faster emails, website copy, immediate call summaries, meeting notes. Helpful, absolutely, but transformative, not just yet.
What we're seeing is reps not quite sure what the next step is, or managers not sure if they're even using the prompts that they've been given. And often sales teams are unsure of the accuracy of their results.
Today's approach to AI is generally augmenting the current sales motion. It's faster horses when CXOs want fast cars. Sellers aren't learning or improving their behavior, and doubling the number of outbound emails isn't magically increasing the quality of the pipeline. That's why revenue growth continues to decelerate and the cost of acquisition continues to rise. How do we know this is a problem? Because too many companies aren't quite getting it right just now, and it's costing billions of dollars with limited results. In fact, a recent MIT study, and many of you probably have seen this, found that 95% of Gen AI pilots are failing because companies are avoiding the hard work of embedding AI into core processes. And here's the reality: true revenue transformation needs more from less. Bigger deal sizes, faster sales cycles, higher conversion rates. And how do you get that? By doing different things. By increasing your team's executive intelligence. By improving the way in which they manage strategic relationships. By storytelling similar customer problems that they have personally solved. And through a collaborative and engaging buyer experience. And all of this requires a deep understanding of your customers' business needs and tailoring your solutions to meet those needs. Not more of the same transactional approaches. What we really need is guided selling. AI that doesn't just make tasks faster, but makes humans smarter and more effective. Guided selling is about embedding trusted insights, proactive coaching, and closed-loop analytics directly into the flow of work. It's about behavioral change that connects upstream planning to downstream execution, so everything works together as one system. And that's where you come in, sales ops and revenue operations leaders and go-to-market leaders. You're the ones who sit at the intersection of strategy and execution. You design the territories, you set the quotas, and you prioritize accounts. And now, for the first time, you have the tools to guide how those plans are executed, measure their impact, and continuously improve them. You're the go-to-market engineers that make this happen, and the spotlight of revenue performance is on you. Now, for those of you who know Databook already, you probably know us for two things. First, for the foundational core intelligence with the trusted insights and rich proprietary data sets that underpin everything that we do. And second, for what we empower on the front end, advanced account research capabilities and seller and marketing-facing deliverables like executive points of view decks that help reps show up strong and campaigns land with impact. Whilst both of those remain critical, they're not enough anymore. And over the last 2 years, in the midst of a non-stop AI development race, we've worked side by side with our own customers, some of the most elite go-to-market organizations in the world, companies that collectively drive over $500 billion in annual revenue, and they trust Databook to help them compete at scale. And together we've advanced Databook by applying our deep go-to-market expertise and AI capabilities, not just to keep pace with change, but to understand the root of the productivity problem and how AI can deliver real impact fast. So today, we're proud to introduce the outcome of our efforts and our ongoing evolution by launching Databook 2.0. First, we have a go-to-market AI studio. And for the first time, Ops and RevOps leaders can build, deploy, and continuously improve AI workflows and coaching workflows that are fully powered by Databook's trusted intelligence, seamlessly connected to first-party data and deployed in the places where sellers are working, in Salesforce and Slack and in Teams. And we're announcing this, and it will be available in beta in November. Second, our AI coaches. They're out-of-the-box coaches that drive true transformation with consistent, accurate, and scalable results. These coaching workflows align to your sales methodology along the key moments that matter, whether that's account planning or prospecting or meeting preparation, value-based proposals, quarterly business reviews, and executive engagement. This is now generally available for all of our customers. Seller maturity analytics. Based on all the interactions and results that your sales team has, you can now get a view of seller competencies and where they need most enablement and support. This updates in real time and gives you leadership teams the visibility that you need to drive execution in the moments that matter. And fourth, the go-to-market control center. All of these components are now part of our new control center that allows sales leaders to plan and track their revenue, manage teams, and analyze execution in real time. All of this is underpinned by the core intelligence I mentioned before, and it builds on our patented and proprietary data and insights that now connect to your CRM backbone with additional new data sets such as private company data, contact data, technographic data, and industry deep dives across 72 sub-industries globally. This is the next chapter for all of enterprise sales and go-to-market. With Databook 2.0, you don't just run go-to-market, you unify it, you guide it, and you prove it. And when you do, the entire go-to-market team wins. Sellers get sharper focus, marketers get stronger narratives, CS teams get better alignment, and leadership finally gets consistent, measurable outcomes. This is guided selling. This is Databook 2.0. And this is your chance to be the heroes who fix the sales productivity crisis once and for all.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for that. And really, one of the heroes that we have to celebrate here, I'm very, very thrilled to welcome Bavesh Patel, Senior Vice President for Industry and Go-to-Market at Databricks. I've had the pleasure of working with him now for the last 6 years. He's an early Brickster who's been there since 2016, when they were just $1 million, I think, in ARR. And he spent the last 9 years scaling industry solutions and field teams, helping customers in all sectors like financial services, healthcare, retail, manufacturing, turning data and AI into measurable business outcomes. Today, he leads the global GTM organization for industries, partnering with customers and alliances to unify data, analytics, and AI on the Databricks platform. Earlier at Databricks, he built the business value consulting function, embedding value engineering into how customers adopt the lakehouse. You'll see his fingerprints on a number of Databricks customer stories and awards programs, and he's a frequent voice highlighting teams that are pushing the boundaries of data and AI. And Databricks most recently crossed the $4 billion ARR mark, so it's an understatement to say, Bavesh, you've played a pretty critical role in that growth. I know prior to Databricks, you spent over 15 years in various software and tech leadership roles in sales and marketing. And I know you're also you used to play a bit of cricket earlier in the time, and we've got some sporting action going on this weekend with the Ryder Cup, and good luck to whoever you're following. So with that, Bavesh, maybe if you don't mind, I've given a bit of background on your role here at Databricks. If you don't mind just expanding a little bit on your path and your journey working with the company.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me today, Anand. Looking forward to the discussion. Yeah, so as you mentioned, I've been at Databricks for about 10 years, and I think from the beginning, the mission has always been to provide a data and AI platform in the cloud for our customers to make it easier for them to build analytics and AI solutions. At scale in a secure way at lower cost. And, we've been on that singular mission from the beginning. And I think, the most recent advancements, in this space have really propelled not only the potential, but the early kind of wins on the board for a lot of customers. That said, there's a lot of noise out there around, as you mentioned in your opening, what's real and what's hype, and are customers really getting business value? So the team I run here at Databricks is really focused around helping our customers kind of navigate all the different options around where should they be making their investments, sharing with them, best practices, early kind of wins that we're learning from the early adopters, and beginning to help them build their AI roadmap so they can get successes and build on it versus just these sunk cost projects. So that's really important for us.
Now, that's fantastic, Bavesh. We talked about the revenue numbers and ARR, that's the headline, but there's a lot of scale in terms of the numbers of customers you have to deal with, the numbers of reps, the number of other supporting functions. Can you give folks a little bit of context? You're growing at an incredible pace. I think a lot of companies would love to be growing at the sort of pace with Databricks. How do you do it? Just give us a bit of a background in terms of the size and the scale at which you're operating.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's when you're growing 60% on average, kind of year over year on a $4 billion run rate, it's a lot of new revenue that's coming in. It's a lot of new people, and also the company is, kind of innovating on the product side, so we have more products. And if you think about Databricks, it's a platform, kind of like a Swiss Army knife. You can do a lot of things with it. So there's a lot of use cases, right? So when you add all that up, scaling the go-to-market organization is a constant challenge. Like we have to really make sure that our teams internally understand first and foremost what are we bringing to market, how to explain it in a way that's going to make sense to customers. Why it's better than what's out there in the market, and then what can they build on it, right? So we are trying to codify a lot of our internal enablement, our internal programs, provide proper automation as we add. We've got over 5,000 people in go-to-market across the planet. We're adding more and more people every day, and my favorite thing is when I go to a meeting and everybody's like, put your hand up if you've been here for less than a year. That's usually more than 50% of the people, right? So.
Wow.
So we constantly are looking for ways to how do we, get people up to speed and provide much more of a frictionless, way to engage with customers, right? That's a key part
Yep.
of what we're doing.
You touched upon the product there, and there's been a ton of product innovation at Databricks over the last decade. And some of the things that we've been adopting here at Databook is beyond the Unity catalogs, the Delta live tables, the Delta sharing, a ton of stuff related to Mosaic. It's been really fascinating to see the amount of new technology and new products that you're bringing to market, and we can build on to quickly iterate. What I wanted to transition to was maybe a little bit of background to some of the early approaches that Databricks have been taking on your AI journey in the go-to-market. Maybe you can just give a bit of background on what you were trying out, what you learned, and where is that going now?
Yeah. Maybe firstly, I could just talk a little bit about kind of how you built your company on Databricks. I know that obviously you're providing a solution that makes it much easier for teams as they engage with their customers on the things that matter. And our platform is a great avenue to go build solutions where you need to bring in a bunch of data, you need to clean it, you need to make sure that it's available, that you can trust it, and that you can build AI solutions. So I love the partnership because I know you're using Databricks on the back end. And really, if you think about the journey that we've been on, just building AI within Databricks, we've moved over to forecasting our business on AI. So we use AI to kind of predict, what our revenue is going to be, what our consumption is going to be. We use our own internal AI BI dashboards. We've gotten rid of all of our Tableau and all of those other tools. And we are also building AI to kind of help our sellers get more intelligent about customers. So we started out with tools like Perplexity, which were awesome because you could do your account research and show up to the customer with a point of view. I think gone are the days when you show up with a customer and you're like, tell me, what keeps you up at night. I mean, I think our customers are expecting us to, do the research, learn about what's happening in their industry, learn their business models. So those general tools helped up level, a lot of our teams. So we spent a lot of time getting these early tools in the hands of the sellers, and they loved it. We did workshops, we showed them how to use it, and they got a lot of productivity out of it. How do we quantify that productivity? Well, that's obviously a bit more tricky. And so I think the chapter that we're in right now, which is what a lot of our customers are trying to figure out as well on the Databricks platform, is what are the exact business workflows that personas are engaging, right? Like what are the steps that they have to do on a day-to-day basis? As I mentioned, we got 5,000 people in go-to-market. If you break down their jobs and start to map out like, hey, these are the things that they do and they activate themselves against on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, start to kind of peel out those end-to-end business processes and then see where AI can help increase their productivity. And I think that's what our companies together have been working on, right?
Yeah, and I think it's actually such a fascinating evolution. When we started to work together in 2019, I remember we were taking those industry use cases around AI and digital transformation by industry. We were mapping them in. We were having a look at companies' performance, bringing out those executive points of views, like you're saying. And that was really our Databook 1.0 story. And as you saw in the intro, here, we're really shifting towards that 2.0 story, recognizing that those workflows are absolutely critical. You've got to pair the people with the process, with the data, with the technology to truly transform a go-to-market organization. And so, as part of that, maybe you can just explain a little bit more about what we've been doing more recently around building these guided selling coaches.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people assume AI is just going to be a magic, wand that they can go and automate an entire process. I think the first thing is to recognize that it's good at some things and it's not good at others, right? And your tolerance for things going wrong will dictate whether you want to even put AI into a process. Many processes aren't ready for it. So one of the things that we've been trying to do is, as we engage with our customers, the most important thing is to get a handle on their data estate. The number one challenge customers have is a fragmented, ecosystem where they have data sitting in SAP and Oracle and SaaS and the cloud data warehouses and applications. And every day, the one constant is data is growing. And the more fragmented their data estate becomes, the less optimal they are set up for AI. Because of course, data is pivotal to AI, right? You got to understand the
Yep.
data. You got to make sure that it's trustworthy. If you put bad data into your AI systems, you're going to get bad results. So most of our customers are trying to organize their data estate, which is what Databricks provides. Like we allow you to build a lakehouse, which is basically moving your data into a single copy on your cloud data lake, and then putting data governance on it and providing access to it for internal use cases as well as third-party use cases, right? So one of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted to help our sellers work with customers if they had these data silos on moving them into Databricks. So we have
Yep.
customers that have all these on-prem solutions, and we wanted a way for us to go to these customers to say, hey, you have some sort of a data warehouse. We know you want to go do these business outcomes. Your data is locked in there. So we wanted to provide like a automated proposal. So it was a very specific workflow our sellers went through, and our teams worked together to take, the data that we know about what customers might be using and what they've told us. And then, we worked with your team to kind of take the intelligence inside of Databook around what is happening in these industries and what's the public data around these accounts. We merged that together and we provided an automated way for our sellers to go to their customers with something customized that they can go to their customer and say, hey, this is how we can activate value from this data that's locked inside of these legacy systems. And it's been awesome because we've been able to move the needle. What otherwise was taking days, weeks is now happening in minutes, and we can get the
Yeah.
customers to respond much more quickly.
Yeah, it's been fantastic, that partnership. And I would say that maybe to add to this, Bavesh, the important piece is the kind of bringing together the domain expertise that you guys have with the business value consulting teams, and then also the industry and the sales teams with the change enablement and launching that and giving them guidance on what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and then being able to do that. And we've had to introduce new team members in our own organization. Forward deployed engineering wasn't a term I was using a year ago, but now we've got forward deployed engineers that we're supporting customers like Databricks. Maybe just to give a sense for the size or the scale, and maybe just I know we were spending about 4 to 6 weeks sort of developing and then rolling that out. Can you, any other data points that you can share just in terms of how this is scaling across the go-to-market team?
Yeah, so I mean, look, I think the build phase is super critical whenever you're developing, your AI solutions, right? You want to include your end customer in. So our sales teams, our, solution architects, like I think when you're building AI, one mistake is to just build it in an ivory tower and then put it out there. You got to get feedback across,
Yeah.
all of your stakeholders. Otherwise, they just won't use it. They'll just go back to doing things the way they used to doing it. So I think part of what we're trying to do is truly understand and have empathy for the work that the field teams are doing, mapping those out, and then figuring out where do we infuse, all of the agentic things that can help them, right? So based on our data platform and the agents capabilities you can build on Databricks, coupled with your forward deployed engineers and the repository of intelligent data around our customers, bringing those worlds together I think we were able to really map out a very specific process, right, that has a very specific output in a very specific part of our sales cycle. And that now is something that we can scale. Whereas before,
Yeah.
if we just had like these general tools, you can send a
Yeah.
prompt to somebody, but how they're going to use it, when they're going to use it, it kind of depends. But now we can track like, hey, are you reaching out to your customer and showing them the value of moving your data estate into a lakehouse and what outcomes you can lock? And the business outcomes were critical. So that's something that we try to focus on is it don't modernize just for the sake of modernizing. You want to modernize because there's business value, right? And so if we
Yeah.
got clear about that, and that's what our teams worked on, the intelligent data we can get now, coupled with unlocking your siloed data, those are becoming powerful tools for this wave of AI.
Yeah, totally. And the thing which is really interesting around all of this is how you mentioned like going from weeks to like hours, and as part of that change management with people, with process. Now we sort of coordinated on the data technology with forward deployed engineers. How do you then go and enable? And it's going to be fascinating to see with the seller maturity analytics, how your teams and how the field teams are using these tools that they've been given. We're starting to see some fantastic feedback and testimonials around how this is making their life easier, how it's helping them do their jobs better. And we also need to think about the folks who perhaps maybe less familiar with some of these tooling and how we help them along the way as well. Maybe just to wrap up this segment here, Bavesh, and you've been very open and around exactly how you're doing all of this. Where do you think all of this is going to go for you guys going forward? What are some of the additional use cases that you guys are thinking about? What are you looking to do next?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that just to touch on your change management comment, I do think that is the biggest area that companies need to focus on. So building these AI systems with end users will allow you to figure out how do you roll it out at scale because you're really catering to the specific needs, right? So that becomes super important. And when you go through that process, you actually start building your roadmap because they're like, okay, we do this really well, but we have all these other things we're doing. So we start to kind of build these user journeys, right? And so where we're going with it is, this is step one of like getting a proposal out the door, but we also know that we want to help customers once they agree that, hey, this is worth it, they want to test it. So how do we start to think about all the things that we do to do a POC? Databricks is cheaper when you're processing data in the cloud. We have a better security framework. How do we help our customers evaluate in a data-driven way more effectively? So we want to take, this first work, build on it, and help the next phase, and so our customers can move faster. Ultimately, the goal is for them to get into production with AI use cases, right? And so we're going to keep looking at all the different manual steps we have, where it makes sense to inject AI in. So we've got a very clear kind of path of where we want to go. How it's all going to unfold, it really depends. I mean, I think that there's new tooling coming out every day. And so, we don't really know exactly what we can automate, what should we automate. We're taking it, one step at a time, and but definitely there's a lot of promise here, and we need to be doing it as a company that builds AI, so that we can be the leaders here in helping our customers understand. And I do think it takes an ecosystem, which is why we're partnering with you guys. Like I think Databricks is not going to go solve all your problems. You need forward deployed engineers, you need change management, you need partners, you need other ISVs that augment the data. So there's all kinds of things that are into consideration, and we've been successful with that model with you guys.
Awesome, Bavesh. I know you're sitting in a hotel room right now in San Francisco. You need to go catch a flight. So I just want to say a big, big thank you for making the time for sharing your story about how we're working together in the partnership. I'm looking forward to the next 6 years and appreciate everything that you've been doing on your side with your team. So thank you very much for coming today.
Yeah, thanks for all your support and I appreciate being on. Have a good one.
Yeah,
Bye.
awesome. Safe travels. Now, we did promise on this webinar that we were going to also have a demo. So I am stoked to introduce two folks who are leading the line here, working with our customers and prospects overall. First, I'm going to introduce Scott Barghaan, who is a board advisor for us at Databook. He brings over 25 years of go-to-market experience, including more than 20 years carrying the bag at both EMC and Salesforce. And after proving himself in the field, he was then asked to go lead Salesforce's global seller experience function, where for 2 years he drove an AI-powered productivity program for 25,000 sellers, SEs, and success professionals worldwide. It included Databook as part of that program, which I'm very proud to see as well. Today, Scott serves as a board advisor not only for us, but also a handful of other companies in the AI space. He's also a limited partner at Stage 2 Capital, and he's soon going to become a teacher as an adjunct professor at Northwestern as part of the Kellogg Sales Institute. So thank you for joining us, Scott. And we've also got Ivan Galea, who is our Chief Technology Officer here at Databook. He leads our overall AI mission with all our product and technology engineering resources, and he's helping our customers to revolutionize their enterprise sales landscape. He's got over 2 decades of experience, and his career spanned leadership roles across finance technology. Before joining Databook, he led the global data science teams at Atlassian, helping to support the transition of customers from on-premise to cloud. Prior to that, he was at Box, where he developed data strategies that were crucial in enhancing growth and efficiency in their lead up to their IPO. And just before that, he spent a long time on Wall Street, where he saw firsthand the transition from the old way of manual trading to electronic and algorithmic trading in the capital markets industry. And he has a PhD from Yale University. So thank you both for coming to this webinar. And I'm going to hand it over to you guys and show us a little bit more about Databook 2.0.
Fantastic. Anand, thank you for the introduction. Scott, great to see you here.
Likewise, Ivan. I'm really glad that we got here to today. This has been a lot of work on behalf of your team to get us here.
So, Scott, I wanted to start. You have over 25 years of work experience, starting with as an account executive and then leading larger and larger sales organizations. Account planning seems to be one thing that takes such a long time for a lot of sales executives and sales reps. Tell me a little bit about why it's so painful and any changes that you've seen over time.
Gosh, you're right. It's something that at the core of every best practice is that there is a plan and a way for us to tie off that plan on how we execute. And it has been, whether it be a paper-based process or one that we tried to automate with good data for all of my years in the field. And it was actually one of the biggest things that we were tackling at Salesforce, because it starts with how do you hand out quotas to teams based upon a reasonable understanding of what's out there. And every rep, when they receives their quota, wants to understand, how did you get to this number? And why do you think I can chase after this type of growth? And you put them through a process of research and trying to back into that number, and then subsequently putting them through how do you then match enablement and all of the promise of your products and services to then that number that they're trying to dial down. And then you put them through additional cadences of saying, hey, now show me the plan in action when all of the noise and all the signals are coming at them. It's hard. And it's one that, especially today, is becoming more and more difficult when sellers, on one hand, have all this new data to work with, but at the same time, it's really hard to tell the signal from the noise. And as Anand talked about, there's more and more pressure on sellers to go faster and to be more impressive because, frankly, they're showing up later and later into the process. So that all compounds into a really challenging research problem for them that exists both within sales ops as well as it exists in the field. And I know this has been something that, when you and I started working together, was one of the first areas we wanted to break down as we wanted to stretch from Databook 1.0 to Databook 2.0. So I'd love for you to maybe show us a little bit of how you and the team started thinking about this problem and some of the workflows that we started to build out together to start tackling it.
Okay, so let's jump into a demo, and I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you can see the screen. Let me go there myself. Okay, so let me start with probably like a familiar view for Databook customers. So this is DatabookAI, and you can see under the message box here that there are 3 categories. We have a number of sales coaches. So far, we've launched this with a number of design partners. Starting next week, we're going to be pushing out a number of coaches to all of our customers. Then we have prompts. So for a number of customers, they define specific prompts that are relevant to their teams. And then we also have assets. And this is probably one of the most popular feature. where there are constructed presentations that for specific situations, for example, an executive point of view, a user can come here, click the button and get that presentation with real-time data. For this demo, I'm going to focus on the coaches, and we have a number of coaches, and we're building a library of these coaches. So for example, we have a prospecting coach, we have a solution positioning coach, and we have account strategy. So I'm going to click at the solution account strategy.
Hey, Ivan.
Yes, Scott.
As you jump into this, I mean, clearly you're here within DatabookAI, but one of the areas that I worked on really deeply at Salesforce with you all is that sometimes the flow of work is different by customer. And for me, particularly, it was in Slack. Tell me a little bit before we go any deeper, is this the place that everyone needs to come, or have you all solved for that?
Yeah, I'm glad that you're asking. A number of sellers are spending a lot of time in different, what we call surfaces, for example, Slack or Teams. And the whole experience that we're going to go through today, although I am in DatabookAI, you can have a similar experience via those two surfaces, so Slack and Teams. We're also in the final stretches of doing an integration with Agentforce and as well as Copilot. As sellers start to work in different environments, including AI environments, we're building connections to those. We had a conversation earlier today with a customer that they wanted to integrate this experience with an in-house tool, and that's available as well through our API.
Great. And I know that there will continue to be new flavors, new modalities, the proverbial Nashville hot chicken of the day, and we're going to make sure that we stay agile to what those may be. And so, speaking of the tried and true, though, I want to bring us back to if we were in the seat of account planning, and especially for a lot of the SOPs teams that are out there, they would have started by carving a territory. And we would give that territory to an account executive, and they would start doing their research. Now, why don't you take us into the coach and show me how you're thinking about solving for what that account executive is trying to do?
Perfect. So for this specific demo, I'm going to choose a private company. You're probably familiar with Databook in the past having enterprise-grade quality for some of the larger global enterprise customers. We've opened up the platform for companies of any size, including private companies. Johnston Carmichael, it's a professional services company based in the UK. And so I'm going to choose that. What's happening here is that I'm kicking off our reasoning engine. And the reasoning engine is leveraging our large database of third-party information. And I created this earlier, so we can go through this flow fairly quickly. And what you can see in the first step is that we're pulling information about the account. We're also perhaps you might like this, Scott, is that we also have a native integration with Salesforce for this particular account. And so we're including any previous closed won and lost opportunities. And sorry about that.
And Ivan, as you scroll through that, like this is a huge step forwards. I know one of the pieces of feedback I had given you is that often where any rep would start would be, what is our relationship today? So where do I know I'm starting from? And this is a great step forwards of starting from where the rep is often most comfortable. But then from there, as we think about, and Anand's talked a lot about this and some of his public LinkedIn work, has been about working customer back. I'm a golfer, and often we think tee to green. But in fact, if we started to think about green back to tee, the idea is, like, where am I trying to land? What is important to this customer? And how do I get my reps thinking about that versus thinking first about how great the company is and the product, services, innovation we may have? And so why don't you take us through a little bit of now into really the updated version of what Databook was always known for to me, of this great third-party information, and how do we shape a case for change?
So, Scott, in the flow, there is a back and forth experience. And although we're guiding the seller, and the step-by-step guide is being driven by the customer, but as a seller, You also have the opportunity to interact, to pause in some area, maybe like ask further questions if you have, maybe like you want to double click into a few areas. And we're going to provide a few examples of that. So the first example is to create an account strategy for this account. And now this account, as I mentioned, it's a private company. So for private companies, we always find it helpful, and we get a ton of feedback from our customers that would tell us, like, I want to know the context of the industry that this particular company is playing in. And so we're including a number of signals of urgency and industry trends. And all of the information is cited so that the rep has full confidence that whatever they are sharing, whatever all the information that they are using for their prep is accurate. And then we're also going to connect it with the strategic priorities for this particular company. Now, one question for you, Scott. Before any customer meeting, I would imagine that you would have done some homework. Like, we don't want to automate everything. We want to put the account executive as the driver.
I'm so glad you brought this up. You know, one of the things, and Bavesh talked about change management, and I think in any big transformation, and I was really glad to spend time alongside some of the world's largest brands at Salesforce to think through this, and how much, often cases, we learned that anchoring on more than just the technology change, arguably more than the process change, became our biggest, frankly, our biggest leverage to success. And to that end, I want to talk a bit about behavior change. And we're going to talk more about that, I think, later in the demo. But I think what's really interesting here is that anyone who's run large teams knows that as much as they may try to hire for tremendous talent in every single role, unfortunately, you're going to get people with different skills and different experiences. And if it's anything like our team at Salesforce, where we changed teams a lot, you had to meet people where they are. And one of the important things that you all have done here, and again, I applaud you and Anand for really driving into this idea of guided selling versus augmented selling, for the simple concept that you want to meet reps where they are. You want them to feel comfortable asking questions, not just automate the thing I don't want to learn or automate the task, but in fact, there was always a reason to account planning. There was a level of thinking, a level of, wait, hold on, but what about this? Or wait, I thought this was the right answer. Or, hey, can you tell me more about that? And that's what I love about how we're starting to put together more of a guided approach than, frankly, a more automate and get it done for me approach. Now, if you go one step further, one of those logical connections was the combination of here is what the customer has bought, here is what the customer has in terms of key problems, and often would be connecting with enablement to say, but what can we do for them next? So tell me a little bit about how you and the team thought about use cases and this idea of right to win.
Perfect. So the next stage within this particular flow is to identify the use case recommendations. That's helpful, but it would be really amazing if, as an account executive, you have visibility into the effectiveness for your team, your organization, for each of the use case. So what we're doing next is what we're calling the right to win. So the coach or the agent is basically looking into historical opportunities that have been closed won across all of your organization for each of the use case. And then it's also calculating the number of deals sold within the industry and the average ACV. Now, we don't stop there. I mentioned earlier that this is different than you ask a question and you get an answer. You're being guided along the way. Maybe like, I want to know a little bit more into, okay, I see that there are 10 deals sold for this particular use case called payroll processing automation. Like, I want to double click into that. What happened here? And so, although that is not a step within the coach, every single step along the way, you're able to interrogate, you're able to explore and expand so that you're very well informed. And so in this case, I basically said, okay, can you tell me more about the payroll processing deals? And now the coach is going back to Salesforce, looking at every single one of those 10 deals and providing me more color about what happened, some context about those deals that would be helpful for me to provide, to frame this particular use case to this account.
I love this. And what I see here is often what we would do in our go-to-market teams, often pulling a lot of people into a war room, aiming to pull the knowledge out of them. Like I remember when I was at Salesforce, I had a fantastic partner in a gentleman named David Landry, who was responsible for our business value team. And David not only had a great ability to pull the numbers and the business value calculation, but his team also had this historical experience of other customers and cases. What I see is something like this, democratizing that type of information and thinking that would allow for every team to scale effectively. And while we're on that topic, one of the other things that would often be let's call it a resource in short reserve would be, how do we take this information and get it to a customer in a PowerPoint or slides, pixel perfect way, which, let's be honest, that's not exactly every sales rep's greatest skill. So how do we take this, Ivan, where now I'm in this environment, and I know I've done this too with ChatGPT and others, and take it and lift it into another format that I can use without spending now another 9 hours trying to translate it?
Fantastic. So if the flow continues with a few additional questions. So if I flip over to the end, basically every single decision and input that the account executive provided, for example, like I prefer that out of all the use cases, I want to focus on the first, the second, and the fifth use case. All of that information is being analyzed and stored. And then the final step is, okay, I would like to, do I want to modify anything, or should I proceed to a DAC generation? When I hit proceed, basically I would get a DAC available over here in notification. Typically it takes around 1 to 2 minutes. So I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna give an example of what that would look like. So bear with me for one quick second.
No worries. As you put this together, I hope that everyone on the line is thinking about those marketing libraries that they have and those first call decks that they have. And often the challenge that we would have, whether it be a sales and revenue operations or as enablement, is trying to make sure that the combination of outside-in thinking, inside-out tribal knowledge, and this idea of how we want to present ourselves consistently came together every time. Those are three very hard things to do. And as someone who has run businesses of large and small scales, even at the smallest scale, this was really hard. So Ivan, you want to take us through maybe how was this in the conversation?
So one of the most popular feature that Databook has been well known with our customers for years is the ability to create really high-grade, enterprise-grade presentations that a rep can basically create and then pick it up and take it to a customer. The innovation here is that we're connecting the deck creation to that specific coach. And so again, as you're going through the coach, you can customize it, you can personalize it, you can make whatever selections, you can have a specific focus. So for example, like I heard that there is something going on with this account and I want to focus, I want to frame something in a particular context. The moment when you're creating the presentation, all that content that you've created would get automatically taken into the presentation. And this is not some generic PowerPoint that doesn't look enterprise grade. This is something that you can take directly into your customer. And so in this case, I'm going to flip maybe like through a few slides. We have the executive summary. It's all framed on what Databook has been famous for, definition of why are we driving the change, why now is the right time, and then why Orchestra AI, which is the fictitious organization company that we're for the demo. And then as you go through, there is information around both the account and about the opportunities, making sure that we're creating the right context for the conversation with the customer, the challenges that they have. We skipped this step into the coach. A number of our customers request that we include calculations, whether it's TCO or any other opportunity. And so those are included here. In the appendix, there is a detailed review of this calculation. So the rep has confidence that there is the right information within the presentation. There is also the methodology used for anything that is included in the presentation. every slide have also notes. And so the rep can very quickly eyeball the notes before the presentation to make sure that they have the right preparation. And then finally, there are also case studies. So like one of the steps that we, through the flow, is to either identify what are some case studies that we might want to highlight. And then the account executive has the option to select the right case study, and that's being pulled into the presentation.
So Ivan, a couple of things here is I'd love to take us to like the next step of this process as I think about from my role at Salesforce, looking at this globally. One of my challenges was global consistency. And that's consistency not only with, hey, these are the best practices I want to bring in, but these are all the data sources I have at the same time. Because at the end of the day, so much of this AI adoption that I know Anand spoke about at the beginning regarding the MIT study comes down to trust. Comes down to, as a rep, especially if I'm going to leave minor, small amounts of time, I'm going to proverbially reduce the amount of time I gave to prep, and I'm going to give room to this agent to help me do so. I have to trust that that agent, that AI bot, that service knows what it's doing. And remember, like, this is something that we can sync underneath Slack, underneath Copilot or Teams, such that, again, it's carrying your organization's brand. So you want to make sure that it has the same level of trust in the data that it's pulling and learning from as any other human-to-human interaction. So to that end, when we were setting up systems as part of Global Seller Experience, one of the fundamental pieces was stringing together our core methodologies, our core data, and as you talked about, some of that 1P integration. Tell me a little bit about how you and the team have been aiming to solve for that when some of our largest customers are challenged with how they share data with us. And then equally, from a skills perspective, I was blessed to have a phenomenal team around me. But even with that big team, the skills around ML and AI, around data architecture, data governance, and clearly prompt engineering and how these tools are federated into those flow of work, Teams, Slack type tools, that's hard. Can you tell me how you and the team are breaking this down and this services plus software approach that you all are taking?
Absolutely. So there are multiple facets and approaches that we're doing. The first approach is that shortly I'm going to showcase our prompt editor. The architecture that we have is vertically integrated for B2B enterprise sales. And this is really important because B2B sales are very different than other type of selling, for example, B2C. And there are specific demands. And like if you're, as you mentioned, like if you're an account executive going in front of a customer, you want to make sure that the information that you have is accurate. You want to make sure that if you've went to any generic LLM, that there wasn't any hallucination. And we've all heard stories, painful stories, when that was not the case. And so we spent and continue to spend a lot of effort, starting with our database, and then layers of reasoning and algorithms on top of our database to make sure that there is a high-grade, enterprise-grade quality. So let me share an example of what this would look like. And before jumping here, I am going to one other thing, Scott, that it's very helpful to your question. We've been investing very heavily into the notion of a team of forward engineers. And forward deployed engineers is a term that you might have heard in the industry. The way that we're doing it is that we have invested heavily into our architecture, but as you mentioned, different customers are at different stages. And so although our goal is to empower customers to build on our platform, we also understand that they might have different needs at any point in time. And so in the beginning, we want to ensure that any deployment that they have can maintain that high quality. And so our forward deployed engineers will partner with our customers to make sure that we have the right context for their particular organization, their particular sales methodology, their particular goals. And then together coaches will build AI assets that meet their needs. Over time, if they prefer to invest in their own go-to-market engineers, we want to have tools that business users, Sales Ops, RevOps, go-to-market leaders are able to edit and modify and to build. And the level of technical capability all the way to go-to-market engineers is based on the choice of the customer. Our deployed engineers can help partner on an ongoing basis, or certain customers prefer that we start with the deployed engineering model and then over time they take a larger portion of the building themselves.
So with only a couple of, we're going to get close on time. I'd love for you to blow out this screen real quick. And a couple of folks on the chat have said that they're having trouble seeing the little characters, just the way that Riverside works here. So if you wouldn't mind zooming in on the browser as you give us maybe a 2-minute tour here, and then we'll talk about one last thing and give it back. There you go. Thanks, man.
So one important element of our whole stack is the native integration between anything that you're getting, in this case within the coach, with our database. And our database that is we're famous for, Trippy, is now integrated with any 1P data that you might want to share in a secure and private way. And so anything that you're seeing here, we have over 100 tools that are available. You can think of it as a library. And so as an example, case for change, this is something that we've spent years developing reasoning. This is if you remember the executive page, why change, why now, and why us. That's already built in. And so you don't have to recreate all of these models every time that you want to include the case for change in a coach. You can just drop it within your particular coach. All the hard work is done for you. If you want to create new tools, obviously you have the ability to take advantage of that native integration with the overall database.
And so, Ivan, as we go from here to our last piece, one thing I want to just call out, and hopefully everybody on the line will resonate with this, is that every day our sales processes are moving farther and farther to the right, whereby we are entering later and later in the process. And that means that our buyers are more responsible for our sales process than ever before. They are running committee-like meetings to try to help get everyone on board. And some of the things that you're showing here are how our reps not only can survive showing up for the first time really late in a process, but showing up personalized, showing up relevant, and actually being helpful to their buyers who are likely commanding a whole different type of sales process. Not, can your product do this, but what does it mean for me to deploy your product in likely a sea of budget cuts, of competitive, let's call it projects for budget, and or competitive timelines, all of which this level of depth, lo and behold, for each company really makes a difference. And as a sales leader, gosh, that made all the difference when we were trying to do it manually, and this idea of doing it at scale is wholly different. Now, we've seen through the lens of an AE how they take on the first challenge. We've talked through the lens of sales and revenue operations as they take on the second challenge. Now, let's go to the third piece. How does this all come together? Because clearly it's great to set it, but we can't forget it. And I'd love to see how this all gets pulled together in terms of how do we measure that we're making progress, whether it be for the seller in their maturity, or are we focused on the right things, just like how we started with covering a territory.
Fantastic. Let's flip over to our admin. And within the admin, we have a number of deep analytics. And this is one example of analytics. Like the notion that we have is that we want to enable the sales organization to have a closed view, closed loop. And so what that means is that from an account executive, you want to automate tasks that are fairly tactical while keeping the account executive in the driver's seat. From a management perspective, you want to provide visibility into what is going on. Where are the AEs maybe like struggling? What are opportunity areas for them, for the manager to coach them? And as Bavesh mentioned earlier, this is really about change management. Like at the end of the day, we're going through a lot of the technology. most likely the most challenging aspect in all of this transformation is going to boil down to change management. And the way that you do change management is that you have visibility into what is going on. And as a manager, you have an opportunity to point areas where your team directs can improve or maybe like do different. And then you also have the opportunity to run A/B tests, maybe like try a few different things and then have immediate information about which one is working better. And so in this case, we're looking at an opportunity. There is the Databook activity on one axis and the propensity to buy. And if I scroll down, I have visibility and account per account. Are your team focused, spending the majority of the time on accounts that matter? Or maybe they are not, and in which case you might want to understand why they are spending time on accounts that might not have the right propensity to buy. You also have visibility into what actions they are taking. One area that we're investing in is starting to quantify the level of productivity gains. That is included on this slide as well here. And then the propensity to buy is a critical component. You want to make sure that sellers are, first of all, focusing on the accounts that matter, and then second of all, that they are taking the right actions against those accounts in order to have a complete closed loop.
Great. And it's at this point, Ivan, I know we can show a lot of things, but I hope that these three major themes came across to everybody. That one is we're helping to tie between all of this that's going on in the open market, thinking customer back to prepare every AE to take the right actions that are relevant to their customers, how we help every go-to-market organization customize that to their own data sources and processes, and then last but not least, help everyone get better by closing the loop and using that as a point of both growth and opportunity to stay on track. And so with that in mind, I'm going to try to stay on our time track. Anand, back to you.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Scott and Ivan. That was fantastic. Really, really helpful. And I'm hopeful that folks who have joined us live or are watching the recording got to learn a little bit more about what we have just launched today as our Databook 2.0 guided selling platform. Just to recap, we've got the go-to-market AI studio. You saw Ivan and Scott talk through some of the 100+ go-to-market tools with all the deep reasoning embedded within there that allows the go-to-market engineers to go build consistency and scalability globally. We have the guided coaching workflows. We just took one example of account planning, but it could be the example that Bavesh talked about earlier from Databricks around a very specific sales play that they wanted to go run, or it could be something around exec briefings. And then lastly, we showed the seller maturity analytics, where we get to identify all of the productivity benefits that organizations are looking for and the return on the investment that they're putting in particular the change management and how people are then getting and benefits overall. All of that sits on top of our core intelligence, sits on top of the integrations with our 1P backbone, whether that's CRM or it could be product marketing or calendar or call recordings. It gives the entirety of the go-to-market control center. A number of those aspects are in GA today, and we have this AI Studio and seller maturity in beta, working with design partners and customers right now, making those available. So I hope for folks on the call, you got to learn a little bit more about what we've launched today. And for anyone who's interested, please join. Please go to our website, databook.com, and get in touch if there's interest to learn a little bit more. Thank you.